Some people will tell you that snacking in between meals is a bad thing, but it's not. It doesn't really matter that much whether you snack between meals or whether you choose not to snack between meals. Again, it comes down to a lot of things like personal preference. Now, one thing is if you are a snacker and you are someone who's trying to lose weight, often you get stuck in this trap of always picking the same snacks, or you get a little bit bored and it's never quite satisfying those taste buds, satisfying that hunger, and you end up kind of then drifting to maybe things that are more calorific, maybe things that aren't necessarily the best options for A, keeping you feeling full, and B, for helping you stick to your calorie target. So in today's episode of the show, what I'm going to talk to you about are some snacking solutions that, in my opinion, never get boring. Now you might say, that's bollocks, Simon. One of these particular things or all of these particular things are fucking boring every single day of the week. But this for me represents the ones that are not boring. So hey, it's my list, it's my podcast. If you like it, great. If you don't, yeah, fuck off. Anyway, I didn't mean to be that harsh to you, but you know what I mean. I meant it with love. So before we get into this episode of the show, if you are watching on YouTube, hit the like button, the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, notifications, all of that sort of good shizzle. And if you are on the podcast as well, you're listening to this one, then great. If you subscribe and if you give a rating and a review on iTunes, that would be absolutely awesome. Share it to your Instagram stories at iron_paradise_fitness. Tag me in it. That would be absolutely awesome. I love to see who's listening from around the world. Plus, we want to get the reach of the podcast out there across YouTube, podcast platforms, as much as possible. And of course, as always, there's going to be some handy links in the show notes for you, whether it's calorie calculator you want, whether it's to make a donation to the podcast so we can keep this whole thing ad-free for as long as possible, or if it's just to find out more information about my online coaching program, the Lean Life Method, where I can help you on a one-to-one basis achieve your goals. That's all going to be in the show notes below. But for now, let's talk about snacking ideas that never get boring. Now, the first one I want to talk about is a personal favorite of mine. I think I pretty much eat this every single day. I think the only times I don't eat it are when I'm not at home and I haven't got access to it. This is Greek yogurt. It's like the food of the gods or the goddesses, whoever creates Greek yogurt. I don't know if you're a Greek god or a Greek goddess, but your yogurt is fantastic. So you get all different sorts of Greek yogurt. Mainly you get ones that have got fat in them. Some have got 0% fat. Now, theoretically, you could use either one when you're on a diet as long as you're accounting for calories. But when you're in a calorie deficit, you're probably trying to save on as many calories as possible and having that kind of balanced relationship between low calorie, high volume. You're trying to get that sort of process in place. Therefore, most of you will probably go for the 0% fat option. And it's a good option because for me, this is the king. This is the king of the high protein snacks. You're going to get about, depending on brand, about 10 grams of protein per 100 grams of yogurt, which is quite packed full of protein. So a couple of 100 grams or more of this particular yogurt is going to get you a decent amount of protein. And when you think about what actually Greek yogurt is in terms of what type of protein, it's actually almost 100% casein protein. And you might think, well, what the fucking big deal about that, Simon? Well, casein protein is like a slow release protein. Now, if you look at certain studies, I think it's Bois et al. 1997. Yeah, I think that rattles off the top of my head because I use it so frequently, is the fact that they showed that with casein protein taken closer to bedtime, that can help prevent muscle protein breakdown during the night. So potentially when you are not having any food, you kind of minimize that opportunity for muscle protein breakdown. So having this casein protein, you could have it as a snack at any time of day, but like a snack towards the end of the evening might help you on that scenario as well. Now, on its own, it tastes fucking good. It tastes fucking good. I could just eat it by the spoonful, a couple of 100 grams, perfectly fine. Actually, I enjoy it. But where the kind of the the real gem of Greek yogurt comes in is its versatility. And this is how it makes the list in terms of not being a boring snack, because you could do so much with it. You could add your favorite scoop of protein powder. Maybe that is some butterscotch flavor or a cinnamon swirl flavor or just regular chocolate, vanilla, banana, whatever it is that you have that tickles your taste buds. You can add a scoop of that protein powder to it. Yes, it's going to add to the protein content. And again, like at the end of the evening, 0.5 to 0.6 grams per kilo of protein is going to be kind of optimal to have at that time. Again, you could have it any time of day. You could have it in the morning as some sort of high protein breakfast, good start to the day. All that sort of stuff is absolutely perfectly fine. You can also add 0 calorie syrups. So again, 0 calorie, so you can put like this maple syrup flavor, honey flavor, anything like that you can add into it to create a different flavor. So you can keep creating different flavor combinations each and every day to keep this snack interesting. You can also add fruits, nuts, for like a nutrient dense breakfast. So you'd be probably higher in calorie if you're adding nuts and things like that, but you could have that as a breakfast, or you could have it as a slightly higher calorie snack at any point other in the day as well. So it's this really versatile snack that you can have lots of different fruit combinations, fruits and nuts. You can add some chocolate into it. You can add some whatever it is, protein powder, anything. It's like this blank canvas that you can start to add things to and create this rich tapestry of snacking that is going to be delivering on all fronts many, many times over. After that, number 2, I'm going to say is protein bars. Now, protein bars are going to give you like 20 grams of protein, roughly speaking, 20 grams of protein for about 200 calories. Now, 200 calorie snack, 20 grams of protein, probably going to satisfy most people in terms of A, helping you stick to the deficit, keeping you feeling full, and also helping you towards that protein target as well. So it's a great option. Now, with protein bars have gone batshit crazy over the course of the last few years. There's so many more options out there, different brands, different flavors than there ever was before, and they're more readily accessible than they ever were before. It used to be you had to go to some distant, dark, fucking vitamin and supplement shop that you never went into, and it was a bit dirty and dingy, or some, out the back cupboard of the gym or some shit like that. Now, get it on Amazon. You can get it in newsagents and wherever it is that you basically can think of. Anywhere that sells like a chocolate bar probably now sells protein bars at the same time. So you don't have to be stuck to one particular flavor. You can kind of switch it up and that sort of stuff, and that makes it a little bit more interesting. Then, of course, people then get too bogged down, I think, in terms of what about the protein quality? So I can't have that. And what about this and the ingredients? And yes, there is maybe some benefit to looking at protein quality a little bit. And I've done an article, which I'll link in the show notes below, about protein bars that you can find out more information about the ingredients you should look for. But don't really let that stop you from trying other flavors and things like that, because in the grand scheme of things, protein quality to that level of minutia is really not worth too much consideration whatsoever. Now, as well, you want to think about maybe, okay, we've got protein stuff there. So we've got protein in terms of the yogurt, in terms of the protein bars, but what about other stuff? Now, fruit is always a good option as well, because it's often easy to carry around with you. So like an apple or a banana has its very own carrying case, if you will. They're high in micronutrients. That's going to help lend itself towards a healthier diet. They're also potentially, depending on which ones you pick, slightly lower in calorie, so you can potentially have quite a lot of them, therefore more food volume. Potentially that helps you feel more satiated, fills up your stomach, less likely to be hungry and kind of snacking on things that maybe you didn't want to be. Now, fruits such as like strawberries and things like that also have a sweetness to them. So if you've got a sweet tooth and you're always going for sugary treats, chocolate and things like that, is that can help satisfy that sweet tooth without actually going way overboard. And I think 100 grams of strawberries probably got about 55 calories in it, so it's not too much at all. So think about like strawberries, blueberries, apples, fruits like this, which you can have in potentially higher quantities that have like a very low calorie exchange. They're going to be very, very good options for you. And plus they're a bit more exciting than dull and boring raw vegetables. So plus having all these different fruits that you have, you can have different flavors each and every day. So yes, you're snacking on fruit, but you're changing it up all the time and really creating some variety. That variety is adding to your micronutrient content, is benefiting you on multiple different levels. And number 4 on my list, and my final one for today, is popcorn. Yes. So some people have not necessarily a sweet tooth, but they go for like the savory stuff. And if that's the case, some people go for crisps or chips, for my American brethren. Now, if you're going for crisps and chips, again, if it's within your calorie deficit and it's overall, you've got a nice healthful diet full of nutrients, full of micronutrients that you need, a bag of crisps isn't going to hurt whatsoever. But it might not be the best option for certain people in certain situations. But having a bag of popcorn actually is a good swap. So your average bag of popcorn, as they are kind of packaged now, roughly gets around like 80 to 88, 89, 90 calories, something like that. Less than 100 calories for a bag. And that's quite easy for a lot of people to fit into their daily calorie allotment without too much issue whatsoever. So again, rather than going for something that's maybe higher calorie, which means you have to sacrifice other foods somewhere else in order for that to fit, it's a little bit better of an option in order for you to try and make everything work within the calorie targets that you have. So they are my 4 go-to options. So they're my 4 snacking options that I generally go to on a regular basis if I'm trying to stick to a calorie deficit, but I'm also trying to get some variety, some interesting flavors, and not get bored with the whole thing. So Greek yogurt with lots of different like versatility you can have within that. Protein bars, again, different flavors, different brands offering you little flavors. Fruits, again, you've got so many different options to pick from. Not only are they going to give you something different in terms of flavor, but also in terms of micronutrients, vitamins and minerals and that sort of things. Plus you've got popcorn as well, a nice exchange on the savory side of things if you're trying to make that type of food fit into your program. So hopefully this episode of the show gave you some ideas, gave you some insights and some thought bubbles and some bright lights above your head that said, right, okay, I'm going to go try these things. I'm going to sort of experiment and find what works for me. And then you're going to start to build up these snack options within your diet. Because one of the things that is really, really useful in terms of being able to, in the future, potentially, if you're tracking right now, to exit that tracking process, is that if you have like an understanding of how interchangeable these foods are, you can build in that variety without actually tracking. So I would sort of start to think about right now, a lot of people have the same breakfast because you are in a morning routine where everything's quite regimented. You've got to get to work on time. So typically a lot of people have very, very similar breakfasts all the time. Then you might say, okay, right, well, I've got these maybe dozen meals in the evening that you have on rotation all the time. You're not exactly creating, epic meals from scratch 365 days a year. You've not got 365 dishes you're creating every year. You've got a group of dishes that you're circulating. So you can, if you're using MyFitnessPal intelligently, you are using it to educate yourself. So when you have your ham, egg, and chips in the evening, you know how many calories that's got. And eventually you don't need to track that anymore because you know. And if you've got these dozen dishes that you know, like, oh, that's about 500 calories, that's about 400 calories, that's about 600, etc., 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 you don't really have to keep tracking these things. So if you've got like breakfast, which is kind of like sorted, you've got dinner, which is kind of like sorted, and then you start to build up snacks where right, I'm never going to get bored of these snacks, and they add a lot of nutrients and good quality nutrition into my diet, and I enjoy them, I don't need to change them. So again, when you're educating yourself through MyFitnessPal, there's a lot less requirement for you to keep tracking this stuff. And then lo and behold, you start to build over the course of time a real understanding of calorie content of various different foods, macronutrient content of various different foods, and it starts to help you transition away from tracking as well. So sometimes, yes, having like things that are the same, as long as you're not creating a nutrient deficiency by having the same thing all the time, is a positive way for you to kind of have control of your nutrition. And then when you go and have those days where you can't track this or you can't track that, you're much less bothered by that whole situation. So hopefully this gave you some ideas to think about how you can manage your nutrition, maybe while you're in a deficit right now, but also helping you post-diet when you are in that sort of maintenance phase as well. If it did help you, I'd love to hear from you. So At iron_paradise_fitness on Instagram is the place to find me. As well, as I mentioned right at the beginning, if you want the calorie calculator, you want information on my one-to-one coaching program, the Lean Life Method, all of the links are in the show notes below. But for now, all that's left for me to say is thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.